video, I'm going to show you all of the specific techniques that you would need to finish Her Royal Highness, Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II. Designed, ready to celebrate the 70 years Jubilee in 2022. So first, let's take a really good look at this design so you've got a good view to refer to. So when you're crocheting any of my dolls, you're crocheting a naked doll first, and then you're crocheting most of the clothes separately and then dressing it afterwards. So this one is using my advanced standard form. So you've actually got a hairline built in. If you see there, you've got your skin tone and you've got your hair tone separately that you then work these chain loops on top, and I'll cover those. You've of course got bead work, and I'll cover all of the details to do with that. You've got her dress, some extra jewelry, you've got built-in gloves, you've got her bracelet there. Then you've got the royal mantle, and that's complete with the crown motif on the bottom as well, with a single bead in that one. And then you've actually got her dress, which has got some nice details. It's got a contrasting colour on the bottom, her classic silver shoes that have got those little ankle chains, and her bloomers under there as well. So lots of lovely details. And what you'll be doing is crocheting the Queen as a doll, and then a separate dress, and then dressing her. And one thing I just really want to point out before we continue, and this is the case with all of my dolls, is that you actually dress them with putting their feet through the neck hole of any of their clothes. So you crochet that naked doll, you stuff, make sure you don't overstuff. Do you see how fluid her body is there? Don't put too much stuffing in, and then you can just slide them feet first through the neckline to put their clothes on at the end. Right, so where to start? Let's start with the hair first. So when you're working her hair on top, what you're going to need is your cream yarn, and you're working two different lengths of chain loop. And what I would recommend is putting all of your shorter ones in first. So all you need to do is you put your hook into the scalp like that. Once you've properly stuffed and sewn up, you work your chain loops to the length as stated in the pattern, and then you go into the hairline like that, approximately 2 stitches away from where you started. And what I would say as a tip is to work all your shorter ones first. So I've done a good covering of the shorter ones all over that scalp, and then I've worked the longer ones in just to break up those shorter ones a little bit. So I put a few longer ones into the top and here on the back, and that's how you'll add the hair on like that. Then another thing that is a common question quite specific to this pattern is how to attach this mantle on. So if I just turn her upside down. So what I'm going to show you now is just how to attach the edge pieces onto that mantle. So you'll make that long ruby red cape in one piece, and then that'll be flat. So you'll be doing rows going backwards and forwards, and then you'll make these edge pieces separately. And to attach it on, all that you need to do, I've chosen to crochet it rather than sew it, but you could sew it as an alternative, but I find it's fastest to crochet it on. Is all you'll do is you'll take your 3D piece like that and put your hook through the flat piece and then through the edging, slip stitch in to begin with, and then all you're going to do is double crochet along between the two pieces, going once into there and once into the top, and that will attach. You go all the way around the edge, and that will attach that together. It is a long piece of work as you're going backwards and forwards, but worth it, because that's going to make it have a really high impact, definitely when she's on display. So you go all the way across like that. You'll be going all the way around the edge if you are doing all 4 edges, and then you just sew in your ends so they're nice and secure, around a stitch as always, and then snip those ends off. So one end in there, and like that, and snip those ends off. Right, let's talk about beads, because that is the thing that's lovely about this design, is the bead work that makes her extra regal, something extra special when you're crocheting. So including in your kit, you've got 6mm glass bicone cut beads is what we're using. And you need to thread those onto the yarn. And this is often the thing that people find most challenging, isn't actually crocheting with the beads. It's getting the beads onto the yarn in the first place. And what I would recommend is using a piece of thread or a piece of fishing wire to do this job. So you can do it with a piece of strong thread, such as a polyester or a strong piece of cotton or embroidery thread, or fishing wire, or tooth floss is another great way of doing it. And what you would do is you would take your beads, and you make a loop with your thread, put your two ends together, and then push them through the bead like that. So you would put several on. Again, as stated in your pattern, it will tell you how many to thread on before you do that piece. So you push both ends through like that, so they're sitting on a loop. Then what you'll do is put the end of your yarn that you're threading them onto through that loop like that, and then you pull them nice and gently, but firmly, so like you mean it, but gently onto that yarn like that. So you'll thread up all of your beads first, and then you'll be ready to crochet with them. So let's start from the beginning, working with beads. And to do that, I'm going to make the whole bracelet so that you can see it. So start with your slip knot and pop that onto your hook once you've got your beads safely on the yarn that you are using. And we're going to chain 18 stitches. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and then slip stitch to join that into a circle. So this is just using techniques that are totally standard. You can see alternative videos for the basics if you want to recap on things like that. Then we're going to DC 8 stitches. So I need to go right the way back into my first one here and do 1, 2, 3. Move your beads along as you go. 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then what we're going to do is double crochet one with a bead and then one normally. So when it comes to doing a double crochet with your bead, what you need to do is move your bead right up to your work here. Then go in to the next stitch along that you're going to work. Keep your bead in the front like that. Yarn over and bring that through to the point where you've got your 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over and through. And that pops your bead in a front facing position. So then I'm going to do a normal one. Then I've got a DC one with bead again. So bring that up. Get your bead into that front facing position, nice and close to your work. Yarn over and through. Then a normal one in between again. And you're going to continue that till you've got your 5 beads on your bracelet. So up with the next one, bead forward, a normal one afterwards, up again. Then once you've got your 5 beads in following that pattern, what we're going to do now is we're actually going to double crochet around the whole bracelet. So this is a technique that is quite unique to working with beads in this design, and that was to try and make the beads look like they were set into something rather than just on the surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to double crochet 8, but I'm going to go right in the middle of the bracelet and yarn over. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And what that's done is brought me right the way around to my beads, but you see I've worked the stitches over the top of the ring. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain 1 along the top of the bead. So I'm going to go chain 1 like that to cross over the top of the bead, and then I'm going to do a double crochet in between the beads, so like that. So chain 1 to go across the top of the next one, and then go in around that bead. So I'm setting the beads in between those double crochet stitches. So chain 1 again, and then I'm going to go in and around the bead like that. So my bead's sitting between my stitches to set it in amongst something. So chain 1 and go back in like that. Chain 1 and one final one. And what that does is it sets those beads in amongst the stitches, so it feels like they've got clusters, like they've got the metal work holding them in place. So when you finish that, snap your end off, sew in your ends, and sewing in ends on a small piece like this can often be quite fiddly. My tip would be take it a long way round. So don't be tempted just to do a couple. I'd take it, weave it right in, so there's no chance that will ever come loose. So go right the way through like that. Snip off those ends, and then that will be ready to put in place on her wrist like that. There we go. So next, let's talk about her crown. And we're doing something very, very similar to what we've just done in that bracelet. But I just want to clarify the instruction where it says to double crochet 8 between the bottom and the top to join it into a tube. And what this is creating a solid piece on the back of that crown. So again, it feels a little bit more three-dimensional rather than like a flat piece of crochet. Now I'm just joining in some yarn because I actually broke off my previous ball. So let me just rejoin that yarn in there. And then I've done 2 stitches. So what you need to do is you need to fold your crown in half like that, and then go in and double crochet 6. I've done my 2, so I've got 6 left. It's 8 the instruction. So you go in between the bottom and the top. 1, 2, and you see how I've got, that's the flat piece of crochet there. I'm going in the bottom and then in through the whole stitch at the top. So 3, 4, 5 and 6. So that's me joining it into a tube by going in between the bottom and the top. It just makes it a bit more three-dimensional. And then next, we're going to double crochet 2 around the crown and then slip stitch into the stitch above the bead. And what it means by around the crown is exactly what we've just been doing with the bracelet. So you go in and you do 1 and go in again and do 2. So you've done 2 double crochets right the way around it. Then slip stitch into the top of your bead, and then you're going to go again. So you're doing 2 in between and 1 across the top. So go in again and do, you've got to keep them nice and relaxed. So they're nice long stitches, 1 and 2 in between the beads, and then slip stitch 1 into the top. So go in again. In and around these beads, you go in, 1 and 2, and then you slip stitch into the top above that bead. And you see how it sets these beads again into a lovely structure with your stitches, that it feels like the crown just feels a little bit more finished than it would if you just left it with those basic crochet stitches as a flat piece of fabric. So we're doing 1, 2 around them again, and then we're slip stitching 1 into the top above the bead. So the last piece of her jewelry that I want to cover is her necklace. So let me just do a pendant from a necklace now. So to make an earring or to make a pendant on the necklace, what we're aiming to do is land a bead in the center of the circle. And that way it will look nice and finished. And again, like it is set. So you need to tie your slip knot once you've got your bead in position. Chain 2. And then double crochet 1 with a bead into the first chain, and then you go on to DC5 into the same chain. So we're going to do 1 with a bead. So when we're working a bead, like we did before, move your bead to the front, move your bead up into position, yarn over from behind it, and finish off that double crochet stitch. So that's us doing our 1, and then we're going to do 5 more into the same hole. So get your hook back in and do 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And then what you do is you're going to pull that tail end, which will just pull that bead tight down into the center of it, and then we're going to slip stitch into the first stitch like that. So go back into that first stitch that you made, put your hook in and slip stitch in, and all that does is it closes it off into a nice neat circle with your bead sitting in the middle of it. So the final thing to do is to point you in the right direction to find the basic videos to finish off your other bits and pieces, because maybe this is the first doll that you've made. Now you'll be able to find other videos that cover all of the parts that are shared across the different doll designs. So you'll be able to find some for hands, some for sewing on noses and eyes. Good luck making your queens. I can't wait to see them. Please share them using the hashtag EdsDolls.